Another day, another story. These wildfires wrought extreme devastation as they roared through neighborhoods and lands in the U.S. North America has a long and painful history with wildfires. Welcome to Tebow Eminent Channel. While today's biggest and deadliest wildfires typically strike the western United States, where climate change has lengthened and aggravated the annual fire season, some of the worst wildfires in North American history ravaged the Midwest and Canada. 1. The Peshtigo Fire and the Great Fires of 1871. For 3 days in October of 1871, the entire upper Midwest of the United States was a raging inferno. 4 of the worst fires in American history, known collectively as the Great Fires of 1871, burned simultaneously in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Among them was the legendary Great Peshtigo Fire that killed an estimated 300 people, charred 17,500 buildings, and left 100,000 people homeless. Meanwhile, 3 other wildfires claimed more than 500 lives in Michigan. But the deadliest of the Great Fires was the Peshtigo Fire that ripped through the rural Wisconsin logging town of Peshtigo on the night of October 8, 1871. The fast-moving wildfire killed 800 residents in Peshtigo alone and claimed as many as 2,400 total victims, making it the deadliest fire in recorded North American history. The summer and fall of 1871 were some of the driest seasons on record in the Midwest. The drought conditions alone would have been enough to make Peshtigo a tinderbox, but the situation was worsened by reckless logging practices that littered the landscape with dead branches and stumps. The context. In the autumn of 1871, the Midwest was suffering from a severe drought, leaving the region parched and vulnerable to wildfires. The Peshtigo area in northeastern Wisconsin was no exception. The forested landscape, primarily consisting of pine trees, was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. The spark. The exact cause of the Peshtigo fire remains uncertain, but it's believed to have started on October 8, 1871, when a series of small fires were ignited. One theory suggests that a group of loggers set a series of fires to clear land for railroad tracks. These fires quickly grew out of control due to the dry conditions and strong winds. The onset of disaster. As the fires merged and the wind picked up, a massive firestorm was unleashed. The firestorm created its own weather system, generating intense heat, high winds, and a wall of flames that reached hundreds of feet in height. The flames moved incredibly swiftly, consuming everything in their path. The devastation. The town of Peshtigo, along with several surrounding communities, was caught completely off guard by the rapidly advancing inferno. The townspeople had little time to react, and many were trapped as the fire swept through. Buildings, trees, and even the very air seemed to catch fire. People were asphyxiated by the superheated air, and those who attempted to escape by water in the Peshtigo River often perished as the firestorm created steam explosions. The death toll. Estimates of the death toll from the Great Peshtigo Fire vary, but it's believed to have claimed the lives of between 1,200 and 2,500 people. Due to the scale of destruction and the isolated nature of the area, the full extent of the disaster wasn't immediately known, and many victims were never identified. Aftermath and recovery. The aftermath of the Peshtigo Fire was a scene of utter devastation. The towns and surrounding forests were reduced to ashes, and survivors faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. Relief efforts were organized, and communities rallied to support one another in the wake of the disaster. The Great Peshtigo Fire is a stark reminder of the destructive power of wildfires, especially in conditions of extreme drought and strong winds. It remains an important part of Wisconsin's history and serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of fire safety and preparedness in wildfire-prone areas. On October 8, a storm front pushed into the upper Midwest with 100 mph winds that whipped small wildfires into flaming cyclones that hit Peshtigo without warning. Many of the town's survivors spent a hellish night in the Peshtigo River flanked by walls of flames. 2. The Cloquet Fire, 1918. The second deadliest fire in North America also struck the upper Midwest nearly 50 years after the Great Fires of 1871. The conditions in 1918 were nearly the same. In fact, it was the driest October in 48 years, when sparks from a passing train ignited a wildfire outside of the small town of Cloquet, Minnesota. The Cloquet Fire of 1918 was a devastating wildfire that struck northeastern Minnesota, leaving destruction and tragedy in its wake. Here's a short story about this historical event. In October 1918, northeastern Minnesota was facing a dry and windy autumn, creating ideal conditions for a destructive wildfire. On October 10, a small fire ignited in the drought-stricken forests near the town of Cloquet. As the fire rapidly grew, driven by powerful winds, it soon became uncontrollable. The residents of Cloquet and nearby communities were caught off guard by the ferocity and speed of the approaching inferno. Panic set in as people tried to flee the relentless wall of flames. Despite the heroic efforts of firefighters and volunteers, the fire proved unstoppable. It swept through towns, forests, and farmlands, leaving a trail of destruction in its path. Entire communities were reduced to ashes. Tragically, the Cloquet fire claimed the lives of approximately 453 people, making it one of the deadliest wildfires in U.S. history. The devastation was immense, and survivors faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives and communities from the ground up. In the aftermath of the fire, the resilience and solidarity of the people of northeastern Minnesota shone through. They rallied together to support one another, providing aid and comfort to those who had lost everything. The Cloquet Fire of 1918 serves as a somber reminder of the destructive power of wildfires and the importance of preparedness and community support in the face of natural disasters. The fire smoldered for several days until October 12, when winds measuring as high as 76 miles per hour fanned the previously tame wildfire into a raging killer. The Cloquet Fire fully consumed the towns of Cloquet, Moose Lake, and Kettle River before bearing down on the larger city of Duluth. More than 1,000 people lost their lives in the wildfire. 38 communities were destroyed and 250,000 acres burned. 3. The Maui Wildfires, 2023, estimated. The historic village of Lahaina on the island of Maui was a tropical paradise that was once the capital of the Hawaiian Empire. But on August 8, 2023, gusting winds from a passing hurricane fueled some existing brush fires into an uncontrollable inferno that leveled Lahaina, killing dozens of unsuspecting residents and tourists. The trouble started not long after midnight in the early hours of August 8 when authorities reported a brush fire in the Maui upcountry, the rolling hills and volcanic mountains near the center of the island. A second fire sparked outside of Lahaina around 6:30 that morning, but Maui fire authorities reported that it was fully contained by 9 a.m. Then gusting winds from Hurricane Dora, which passed the Hawaiian Islands hundreds of miles to the south, fanned the brush fires back to life. In the confusion and chaos, many residents of Lahaina didn't know that they were surrounded by a tightening circle of flames. When escape routes were blocked by choking smoke and searing heat, some desperate residents scrambled into the ocean and remained there for hours. The death toll from the Maui wildfires stands at 114, as of August 21, 2023, already making the blaze the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. Sadly, those numbers were expected to increase as an estimated 1,000 remained missing or unaccounted for. The Big Burn, or Big Blow-Up, 1910. Over just 36 hours in August of 1910, an unprecedented wildfire known as the Big Burn, or the Big Blow-Up, scorched 3 million acres of virgin forest in Montana, Idaho, and Washington. It was an early and painful test of the U.S. Forestry Service, formed in 1905. Of the 87 people who died in the blaze, 78 of them were firefighters. As with other deadly fires in North America, the 1910 blaze began as a patchwork of small brush fires burning in drought-stricken forests. Then came the wind. Hurricane-force winds from a massive cold front slammed into the region and whipped the brush fires into a frenzy. Firefighters and survivors of the Big Blow-Up describe flaming trees ripped from the ground and hurled through the air at 70 meters ph. The heat was so intense that trees exploded like Roman candles, according to one survivor. The death and destruction wrought by the Big Blow-Up convinced the U.S. Forestry Service to combat and contain even the smallest forest fires to avoid another massive conflagration. 5. The Camp Fire, 2018. In November of 2018, the Northern Californian town of Paradise was transformed into a living hell by the deadliest wildfire in California history. The late summer and fall are known as fire season in California, but nothing prepared the communities of Paradise and nearby Concow for the violence and intensity of the Camp Fire. The blaze was ignited on November 8 by a nearly 100-year-old electrical transmission line in the Sierra Nevada foothills above Paradise. A stiff wind pushed the wildfire rapidly downhill before many residents of nearby communities could escape. The speed of the wildfire at its peak intensity was calculated as 80 football fields a minute. It took just 4 hours for the Camp Fire to nearly erase the town of Paradise, claiming 86 lives and leaving more than 30,000 people homeless. More than 5,500 firefighters were deployed to fight the deadly blaze, which burned for 17 days. Please keep in mind that the situation with wildfires is dynamic, and new events can occur at any time. It's crucial to stay informed about current wildfire risks and follow evacuation orders and safety guidelines issued by local authorities to protect yourself and your community from these destructive events. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.